Today we're going to read a new text, and we're going to work on determining whether the details are key details or simply interesting details. Remember that our important key details are the ones that we have to have in order to understand the main idea of the passage. Whereas interesting details are interesting. They add enjoyment to the story or to the text, but we don't have to have them in order to understand the main idea. Let's go ahead and start reading our new text. Canada's Wonderland is a theme park near the city of Toronto. On August 22nd, the park made an announcement. Next year, it will open a new ride called the Yukon Striker. The ride will be the world's tallest, fastest, and longest dive coaster. What, you may wonder, is a dive coaster? It's a special type of thrill machine. An ordinary roller coaster takes riders up a lift hill and immediately drops them down the other side. A dive coaster stalls and halts the train just over the top of the hill. It lets the passengers stare down for a few terrifying seconds. The Yukon Strikers riders will stare down a 245-foot, 90-degree drop. It will send them racing down the track at 80 miles an hour. What a dive! The coaster's huge trains will include 3 rows of 8 riders. The floorless design will allow passengers to dangle their legs. Now, as we read this passage, we were reading about a new ride that has been announced to open at Canada's Wonderland theme park in Toronto. The focus of this passage was about the new ride that was going to open at this theme park. We have several details underlined, some which are important key details, and others that are just interesting. Let's look at this detail down here. The coaster's huge trains will include 3 rows of 8 riders. Is this a detail that is necessary in order to understand this passage, or is it an interesting detail? I would say that this detail is an interesting detail. It's telling me that the trains will have 3 rows of 8 riders, but I don't have to know this information in order to understand that this theme park is opening up a new ride, a new dive coaster. This detail here is a detail that I would classify as being an interesting detail. I would take that detail and drag it to the interesting detail section. Let's take a look at another detail. The ride will be the world's tallest, fastest, and longest dive coaster. I would say that this detail is an important key detail. This detail is telling us why this new ride is so important or significant. It's not just like any other dive coaster. It's going to be the tallest, the fastest, and the longest one in the world. That's a detail that would be important enough to classify as a key detail, not an interesting detail. So I would take that detail. The ride will be the world's tallest, fastest, and longest dive coaster, and I would drag that into being an important key detail. You're now going to go through and you're going to look at the remaining details, and you are going to classify whether it is an interesting detail or an important key detail. To finish your work today, you're going to choose one of the interesting details and explain why it is not a key detail of the text, why it is simply just an interesting detail. Explain why it doesn't support the main idea, why we don't have to have it in order to understand the main idea of the passage.